The scrolling text on the console was a death warrant signed in neon blue. Princess Alara stared at the log entry for the Athelian-Terran War, her hands trembling against the cold metal casing. It wasn't a campaign history. It was a summary. Tier 3 contingency. Minimal asset allocation for border stabilization. The war that had bled Ethelgard White was a Terran clerical error. Have you ever realized that the monster in the room wasn't the one growling, but the one holding the leash? It is a marriage of necessity, not desire, Archon Kalen had whispered 3 months ago. The air in the High Spire had been heavy with the scent of ozone and failing shields. The High Oversight Committee watched the playback with a clinical detachment that tasted like copper. On the screen, the Meridian Nexus shimmered. Commander Elias Thorne stepped forward, his skin looking like wet clay compared to the bioluminescent glow of our princess. He offered a hand. A handshake. A primitive, tactile ritual from a species that supposedly lacked the neural link capabilities of the Athelian elite. Beneath the heavy obsidian table, the recycled air vent of the council chamber hummed a low, vibrating G-sharp. The Terrans moved with a deceptive softness. Thorne's eyes were a dull brown, lacking the inner fire of a true warrior. We watched Alara accept his hand, her silver-threaded ritual veil catching the artificial light of the docking bay. At the time, we categorized the Terrans as a secondary threat, a fragile surface civilization that had stumbled into a stalemate through sheer bureaucratic luck. We were so certain of our superiority. They laughed too much, Counselor Vallis noted during the 3rd hour of the wedding reception on Terrasol. The footage showed humans in formal dress, drinking fermented liquids and dancing to rhythmic vibrations. There was no military discipline in their posture, no armor in their gait. They spoke of the Terran Accords as if they were holy scripture, a set of self-imposed chains that kept them from, which meant the human smile wasn't a greeting. It was, wait, the committee paused the feed. Thorne was leaning in, whispering to Alara. His pulse, according to the biometrics Alara was secretly recording, hadn't spiked once. Not during the vows. Not during the exchange of the ritual veil. He was a man at a garden party while his species maintained a 10,000 years history of internal slaughter. The committee analyzed the architecture of their capital. Terrasol was a world of glass and greenery, a jarring contrast to the jagged, obsidian fortresses of Ethelgard. We looked for the forges. We looked for the orbital shipyards that could justify a 3-year draw. We found parks. We found libraries. In the archival footage, Alara wanders through a Terran museum. She stops before a wall of black stone inscribed with millions of names. The guide calls it the Extinction Memorial. Our analysts initially thought it was a tribute to their own fallen. It wasn't. It was a list of every sentient competitor they had erased from their own planet before they even reached the stars. The Terrans weren't peaceful because they were soft. They were peaceful because they were finished. They had already won the only war that mattered, the one against themselves. Every interaction between Thorne and Alara was now reevaluated. His gentleness wasn't the byproduct of a weak spirit. It was calculated mercy, a leash. He treated our princess with the care one might show a delicate porcelain doll, or perhaps a live grenade that hadn't been pinned yet. We're documenting the truth that Ethelgard tried to bury, and we want you with us. Join our ranks to ensure the records remain open. The Vorgath did not understand the silence of the Terrans. When the swarm ships descended upon our outer colonies, they expected a frantic defense, a desperate plea for terms from a species that had spent 3 years dancing around our borders without ever dealing a killing blow. Instead, they found a void that bit back. In the High Oversight Command Center, Counselor Myra's data stylus clicked rhythmically against the obsidian desk. Click, click, click. The sound was the only thing keeping us grounded as the telemetry arrived from the front. It was here we saw the Terran Accords in motion, not as dry text, but as a cascading wall of fire that systematically dismantled the Vorgath logistics before a single swarm ship could even charge its primary emitters. The Terrans didn't just fight, they performed a Tier 10 surgical excision, deploying kinetic impactors that traveled at percentages of light speed to erase command hubs while their electronic warfare suites turned the Vorgath's own targeting computers into recursive loops of gibberish. As the Terran dreadnought Unspoken Hope decloaked above the Vorgath capital, a massive obsidian shard bristling with railgun batteries and localized gravity wells that warped the very starlight passing around its hull, we realized that the stalemate we had bragged about for years was merely a polite refusal to pull the trigger. If the Tier 3 readings were accurate, then Ethelgard was never. The screen flared. A high-priority transmission from the Vorgath High Overlord's throne room cut the thought short. Princess Alara was there, standing beside Commander Thorn as his special operations team stood amidst the smoldering remains of an impregnable palace. We returned to that blue-lit console where Alara first saw the truth. The terminal didn't lie. Level 47. Xenocide. Complete destruction of enemy species. The words sat there, cold and indifferent, a reminder that the Terrans had protocols for turning stars into graves. "You were holding back," Alara whispered as Thorn entered the room. His boots made no sound on the Terran carpet. He didn't look like a conqueror. He looked like a man who had just finished a long, unpleasant shift at a factory. He sat down heavily, the weight of 10,000 years of human blood visible in the slump of his shoulders. "We didn't want to be the monsters Ethelgard expected us to be," he replied. "We prefer the neighbors we've become." They chose mercy. Alara reached up and touched the silver-threaded ritual veil draped over the back of her chair. It was no longer a symbol of her sacrifice to a weak enemy. It was a shroud for her own arrogance. She saw the Terrans now for what they were: apex predators who had decided that the most effective weapon in the galaxy was a genuine smile. Counselor Vallis reached for the terminal and began the update. Reclassification report. Species designate Terran. Previous status: secondary threat/stalemate. New status: Apex Guardian. Recommendation: total diplomatic transparency. The file closed with a soft, digital chime. On the monitor, a single silver thread from a discarded veil caught the light, gleaming like a needle in the dark. If you had the power to end a war in a day but chose to wait 3 years to save your enemy, would you be a saint or a monster? Tell us your thoughts below, and come back tomorrow as we uncover more secrets of the Terran Accords.